Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Alien Frontiers from GameSloot and Clever Mojo Games. Specifically, this is the latest edition, which I believe is the 4th edition, if I'm not mistaken, which just has a little, I think it's a few rules tweaks, some extra cards thrown in, and some better components. But Alien Frontiers is a very interesting game because a lot of people point to it as the game that proves that Kickstarter can work. This game was originally funded on Kickstarter like in the early days of Kickstarter, I believe. It's at least a few years old. And I think Kickstarter really came into its own in like 2011, so that's right around the time Alien Frontiers was funded originally. And obviously it's gone through different editions, and this latest edition was also funded on Kickstarter as well. But, you know, a lot of people do not like Kickstarter. They feel that games are not play tested enough, they're not real games. But Alien Frontiers seems to buck that trend. It's very, very well loved. Tons of people have responded to it in a positive way, and I believe it's even in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. And what is the game? Well, it's a worker placement game with a twist. Obviously, the theme is different than a lot of Euro-style worker placement games, in the sense that you are a I don't know, you're helming like a fleet that's trying to colonize a planet, I believe Mars. And it's got the artwork and the theme of the game is actually sort of old-timey space travel. So all the ships look like those cigar-shaped ships with the point on them, and everyone's wearing spacesuits that look like they were from some pulp comic in the 50s. So it gives it a very unique feel. And the way that the worker placement works is that your ships, your workers, are actually dice. You roll the dice and try to get certain number combinations and put them on different spots around the board, representing the capability of your fleet to colonize the planet below. The first person to run out of colonies ends the game, and whoever has the most points at that point is the winner. I've said enough here. Let's go to a brief overview of how it works. Then we're going to come back. I'll give you my final opinion. Okay, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Alien Frontiers. This is a competitive worker placement game for 2 to 4 players. However, your workers in this game are dice, and they are actually spaceships. The theme is that you are trying to colonize an alien planet, or I think it's Mars or something like that, with your little colonies, and it's got sort of a retro sci-fi look to it, like cigar-shaped spaceships and all that jazz. The game is going to end when one player puts down all of his colonies down on the planet. At that point, you're going to look at the score track and see who has the most points. That player is going to be the winner. Now, each player is going to start with 3 ships of their color, which are just dice. You'll also start off with a bunch of colonies depending on the number of players. But there's 9 total in the game. You're going to put one of your little rocket ships over on the score track over here. And then you're going to do the rest of the setup, which is putting out all these power tokens out on the board. So if you control a specific spot on the planet, you're going to gain control of this token. Controlling is having the most colonies, even if it's just one, on a space on the planet. And all of these tokens are named after famous science fiction authors. Now, depending on the number of players, you may have to block off some spaces on the board. Otherwise, it's going to look like this. Every ship space, every image of a ship on the board is a space for you to put your dice representing your ships. So this is the worker placement aspect. When you put certain ships either by themselves or in certain sequences with other ships at the same time, you're going to get special abilities depending on where you've placed. So every player also starts off with an alien tech card. Alien tech cards are either going to give you a bonus you can consistently use by spending fuel on your turn. So for instance, a gravity manipulator, you can spend 2 fuel, which are these little tokens over here, in order to get a special ability, which is move 1 point from one of your unplaced ships to another. Points being the actual points on the dice when you roll them during your turn. Every tech card also lets you discard the card permanently in order to get another special ability. In this case, you can discard it to place the repulsion field on any territory or move the repulsion field to a different territory. The repulsion field, for this edition of the game, you can use this happy little fellow to represent that. And it's just going to be a powerful special ability. I'll get back to that in a minute. Now, all of the different areas on the board are going to give you a different effect. When the game is ready to begin, you'll take your 3 ships that you start the game with. You'll have other ships that you'll be able to build a little bit later. And whoever goes first, you'll roll off to you goes first. Then you're going to roll them. and then look at what numbers you have and decide what you're going to do on each space of the board. So let's start over here in the Lunar Mine. At the Lunar Mine, this is where you're going to get ore. Ore is important for doing a lot of different other abilities like building ships, building colonies, which is going to win you the game, or even trading them in for fuel potentially. Actually, no, you use fuel to make it into ore. Ore is more valuable than fuel. At the Lunar Mine, you can place any die that you want here if you're the first person to go here, and then you're just gonna you'll just get to take an ore. It's as simple as that. However, every subsequent die, every subsequent ship that's placed there has to be equal to or greater than the last ship that was placed there. So you could actually just put a 6 there if you have it right off the bat, and you wouldn't be able to put any more ships there if that was your first one, but ships that you placed out on the board are going to stick around till the start of your next turn, so you would actually make things very difficult for the next person to put one of their ships here. The colony constructor, by putting 3 ships of equal value, so let's say that you had 3 3s, you'd be able to put all 3 of those there on your turn and spend 3 ore, so you'd already have to have 3 ore. That allows you to take one of your colonies from the stock and put it out on the board. And like I said, as soon as you put a colony out, if it gives you control of an area, either because it's the first one there or you've now surpassed and beaten the tie with another player, you'll get to take the special ability. I'll read a few of these off. The Van Vogt Mountains say that the first ship you dock at the Lunar Mine each turn may be of any value. The Bradbury Plateau says that you can pay 1 less ore than normal when you use the colony constructor, which we just illustrated. So those are just a couple of examples. Actually, I'll explain one last one. That would be the Burroughs Desert, because this is the most unusual one. Once you have this, you can purchase the relic ship by spending a fuel or an ore on your turn. So you get another ship that's yours only to control. Now, if you lose control of any of these abilities, you will immediately lose the effects, including the relic ship, so keep that in mind if you lose control of the territory. The Colonist Hub. This is sort of like a track where you can slowly start building a colony. You can put any die of any value that you want there, and the first one that you put there is going to let you take a colony from your stock and put it at the end of the track. After that, every ship that you put there is going to move that colony up 1 space on the track. When it finally gets to the last space, which is the 7th space, at any point during your turn, you can spend a fuel and an ore to take that colony and then put it out and colonize part of the planet. So it can be kind of a slow process, although there is at least one special power from the board that's going to let you get, if you put at least 2 ships there, you get an extra space on your turn. So you can speed it up quite a bit if you want to go that route. We'll go up here. The maintenance bay. This is where ships go when they're destroyed, then you get to take them back at the start of your turn. But also, there are some ships that are off of the board. These have not been built yet for each of the different players. So each player would actually have 3 ships over there at the start of the game. When you want to build a ship, you need to put 2 ships of equal value here. There's 3 spots in a 4-player game. And spend, if it's your 4th ship, you need to spend a fuel and an ore. If it's your 5th ship, 2 ore and 2 fuel, and then 3 fuel and 3 ore for your 6th ship. Now, building a ship doesn't give it to you right away. You're just going to take it from the side of the board and put it in the maintenance bay, and then at the start of your next turn, you'll gather it together with all the rest of your dice that are on the board, and then you shall have it. The solar converter, no, let's talk about the terraforming station first. The terraforming station, you need to put a die there that is exactly 6. And if you do that, it stays there for right then, and you get to put a colony from your stock out on the board. However, at the start of your next turn, that die is destroyed. It goes back to the side of the maintenance bay, or in the shipyard, signifying that you've consumed an entire ship in order to terraform a part of the planet. Also, it's worth noting that you cannot do that if it would reduce you down to less than 3 dice, because you have to have at least 3 ships. The solar converter, this is where you can get fuel. Depending on if you put a 1 or 2 there, you get 1 fuel. If you put a 3 or 4 there, you get 2 fuel. If you put a 5 or 6 there, you get 3 fuel. So the higher the number, the better and more efficient in how you gain fuel. The orbital market is where you can turn fuel into ore, which is more valuable than fuel and more useful. In order to do that, you need to put 2 dice of equal value, and then you get to pay whatever the cost is of those 2 dice. So if you put 2 1s there, it's 1. Pay that much fuel to get an ore. So it's just that many fuel for 1 ore. So the higher the number, the worse it is. Like if you put 2 6s there, you'd have to pay 6 fuel just to get 1 ore. So lower is better. The alien artifact space, 2 things can happen here. for each die that you put there, you have the chance to wipe out the row of cards and get 3 new ones out there, but that's just purely optional. Once you get up to the point where you have 8 or more value of dice in this spot, so let's say that I put these 2 3s and a 2, then you can take one of the face-up alien tech cards in the row and immediately put it in front of you and potentially use it if you can. So just read a few more of them and what they do. You have the Temporal Warper. You can pay a fuel to reroll any quantity of your unplaced ships, or you can discard this card permanently to review the discard pile, then discard this to claim one of those discarded cards. The Holographic Decoy. Opponents may not steal your ore or your fuel from you with the Raider's outpost space, or if you discard this, if they steal a card from you, then it must be this card. So actually, you don't have to discard it. That's kind of interesting. The Data Crystal. You can pay a fuel per colony on a territory to use that territory's bonus, except for the Burrows Desert. You can't claim the relics if someone has it. Or you can discard this to place the positron field on any territory, or move the positron field to a different territory. The positron field is going to give you an extra point at the end of the game if you have control of that territory. So if this was like this, and I had control of the territory, not only would I gain that power, I'd also immediately gain a point. I'd gain another point for having control, and I'll talk about this again at the end during the end game scoring. And I'd also gain an extra point just for having the positron field there. The repulsion field is going to keep someone from placing or removing colonies from this area of the planet, whatever territory that it's in. And the isolation field, if you have that down in an area, is going to nullify the territory bonus of that of whatever that territory is. So each of those can be very powerful effects if used properly, and they may be bounced around by the effects of cards. So whenever an alien tech card is taken, it's going to be immediately replaced from the top of the deck. And the last spot we'll talk about is the Raider's Outpost. You need to put a sequence of numbers here. So 1, 2, 3, or 3, 4, 5, or 5, or 4, 5, 6. If you can put a sequence of numbers there, then you're going to get to take either 4 of any kind of resources from another player, or a tech card that they have control of. You have to choose one of those two. One thing I did forget to mention is you can only have a total of 8 resources at the end of your turn. If you have more resources than that, then you have to discard down. This is also one of the very few spots where, without having to use an alien tech card, you can bump other people. Let's say there was a 1, 2, 3 here. Someone can bump you if they were to play a 2, 3, 4. So they have to play a strictly higher sequence in order to bump you out. And that just lets you raid people and take all their stuff with no sort of recompense or blowback whatsoever, until they potentially do the same thing to you and take their stuff back on their next turn. And that's really the game. You're going to go around trying to place your ships out, get vital resources in order to put as many colonies down on the track as possible. You get 1 point for every colony that you place out on the board. And if you have control by doing so, you're going to gain an extra point for every territory that you control. There are at least 2 cards in the tech card deck, like the Alien Monument and the Alien Valley, I believe, which are going to give you a point just by having them. And also the positron field. If you have control of the territory that has a positron field, that's an extra point as well. Have the most points by the time someone puts down their last colony, and you will be the winner. That is Alien Frontiers. Now, I was very excited to get Alien Frontiers because actually the game was really hard to get for a while in between the 3rd and the 4th printing. I didn't back it on Kickstarter, but as soon as pre-orders came available for the 4th edition, I snatched it up. I'd heard so many good things about this game, how it really effectively bridges the gap between stodgy Eurogame worker placement games and to Ameritrash games, while having a great theme while still having those solid mechanics. So I was very eager to get it, and when I finally got it and played it once, I was like, I don't know about this. And I was so sort of disappointed in my first play of it that I held off on playing it for a very long time. That's why I haven't reviewed it to this point, even though this edition's been out for months now. And then I finally got it to the table again, played it again, and was like, no, it's still not doing anything for me. And I played it one final time and said, okay, I think I've made up my mind. This game is not for me. I know that I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because this game is so well loved, and especially since I'm the Kickstarter guy, so I should have a deep appreciation for what this game means to the Kickstarter board gaming community as a whole. But for me, there are some aspects of this game, of Alien Frontiers, that I hate. And it drags down every other innovative, cool thing about the game. But let's start at the beginning, and I'll talk about the components and the theme. Components are awesome. Now, I never experienced the previous editions of the game, but I know these got at least a slight upgrade with the components, and man, it's just really, really cool. I like the little colonies. Those are the coolest part. They use those generic spaceships for the point trackers. I most recently saw those in Impulse, but that's okay. They still look cool. They use tuck boxes because every Game Salute game has to have tuck boxes, but it actually works really well for this one. They gave you just the right amount, and so everything gets filed together really, really neatly, so I do appreciate that. The board looks great. The artwork, everything looks clear. It's great artwork that doesn't actually have terrible graphic design, which is like a balance a lot of games have to strike, but it works really well here. It's very clear to tell where your workers have to go. If you play with less than 4 players, which I've done, you have to use docking covers for certain spots, and that gets a little wonky. I think maybe a card would have been better, but it does look cool because they actually put the artwork, parts of the artwork, onto the docking covers so that they kind of fit in like a puzzle. Anyways, that's kind of neat, and all the dice are fine. So component-wise, knocks it out of the park. Oh, I also like the little, they're completely unnecessary, but they made miniatures for each of the fields, like the positron field and the repulsor field, the isolation field. Completely unnecessary, but they look really, really cool. So I like all that stuff. Presentation is really good. As far as the theme, yeah, I mean, there's some really cool things here that really make the theme come out, especially like the colonist hub track, like we call it the racetrack, where you're trying to get a colony down to the planet, the terraforming station, how you're getting the resources, all of these things. You know, what it boils down to is you rolling dice and putting them on the board in a certain sequence, but it's still, because of the actions that you take with those, it feels really thematic, at least that aspect of it. And they do some neat things, like having each section of the planet I think it's Mars, right? For some reason, I think it is supposed to be Mars, but anyways, each section of the planet is named after a famous author, science fiction author, which is really, really cool. And I like that you get different special abilities for having done that. So yeah, I like the theme, and the old-timey artwork doesn't totally do it for me, but it does fit, and it is really well done. Now, on to the mechanics. Like I said, there are parts of this game that I think are really, really super cool, and it has to do with what I just mentioned, with the different parts of the board that you can go to. It's not just thematic, but it's satisfying and feels really well done. Like the Colonist Hub track. You know, you could just go ape on that thing and get a ton of different, you know, put a ton of dice there, get a lot of traction there, and put down colonists, but it's really a slow and inefficient way to do that unless you get, I think it's the Asimov crater, which is going to let you move up faster, but that's one of the things you can do in this game. You have a different strategy there. Again, with the colony constructor, that's really hard to do unless you stock up a lot of resources. But that's a different avenue, and that feels cool too. The terraforming. Do you want to sacrifice a ship in order to get a colony? Well, it might be worth it for you. It might be worth it for you if you can get a new power from the planet, or lock down a colony that you're waging war for, or if it's the end of the game and you just need that little extra push to either end the game or make sure that you're not going to be in last place. There's just a lot of cool things, and the whole mechanic of using the dice is neat. I mean, it's not the first time that I played it. It might have been the first worker placement game to do that, but since I played Euphoria first, I had already been used to that, and I think I like Euphoria a lot more than this game, by the way. It's why Euphoria is still in my collection for a long time. But still, it works very well in Alien Frontiers as well. Yes, you're just matching up dice numbers, but it's very easy. You always feel like you have something to do on your turn. No turn is really a total waste. So I do like the whole central mechanic of this, and it works very well. So all that sounds great. Why do I hate, you know, other aspects of this game? The main thing is what I call the take that aspects of this game. It's not just a small part of the game, it's a huge part of the game. I like Lords of Waterdeep. It's, you know, I think it's fallen down in my good graces quite a bit, but it's still a very enjoyable game. And the thing I hate the most about Lords of Waterdeep is the take that elements in that game. Not just a mandatory quest, but when you have the new expansion, which is very cool, you have things like the Open Lord card that together with the take that just made it really, really bad. But it still feels like a smaller part of Lords of Waterdeep and doesn't ruin my experience. In Alien Frontiers, the alien tech cards that can totally screw you over, the pirate bay or the pirate's nest or whatever it's called, the Raiders Post, that's what it is. Those things are such a huge part of this game because you're always in situations where there's no reason you shouldn't do it. And it's such an easy thing to do to completely screw up another player's engine and what they're trying to do. And I know that since everything is fair game, you can go and get an alien tech card and screw me over if you want, and I can go to the Raiders outpost if you want. But doing that over and over again just to screw other players, it seems like you can easily say, oh, well, just don't play that way, but people are going to play that way. And the Raiders post especially is the most annoying section on the board because in more than one occasion during the 3 plays of this that I've had, people just go to war over that thing. Someone puts a 1, 2, and 3 there. And takes a bunch of resources. That player's turn comes up. They put a 4, 5, and 6 there. Or, and until eventually someone has to stop because no one can put a higher sequence of numbers there. And what has been gained? Nothing. You haven't built up your engine. You haven't really put yourself further ahead, maybe just a tad. But you've gained very, very little for a lot of effort when you could have been doing all these other cool spaces. But nevertheless, that space is there, and there are times when you just feel compelled to use it. And whether you don't want to or not, someone else is going to. The alien tech cards are the same ways. There's a card that you can discard to or destroy someone's ship. That is so tremendously crippling if done at the right time that I think it should be out of the game altogether. It's terrible. And there's other cards like that that can totally screw up someone's strategy. I've won this game once and lost it twice, and one of the games that I lost, I think probably the first one, I thought I was doing pretty well. And by the way, I don't really care. I've played so many games, I really don't care if I win or lose, but if I work really hard and I feel like I've got a good system going on, and I think in that game I had the Asimov crater, so I was going up the colonist track a lot, and I had the relic ship, I was just doing really, really well. And it came down to the wire. There was someone else very close to me, but I felt that, with my turn coming up, I was going to win the game. Someone played one card and just destroyed one of my ships, and it just completely sunk what I was going to do. Actually, no, he played 2 cards. One of them that swapped colonies, and one of them that destroyed one of my ships. And that's it. He just had these cards, and it just completely obliterated my game. And then, the last game of this I played, which I won, I pretty much did the same thing to someone else. I destroyed their ship. I raided their outpost, took all their resources. I locked down the ore spaces, the mining plant or whatever it is, where you can get more ore by putting high numbers there, and effectively locked him out of winning the game. There was at like the midpoint of the game, there was no conceivable way that he could catch up and win. It just wasn't going to happen. Even if he took spaces explicitly to stop me, like taking the relic ship back from me, or at least keeping me from having it, he still wasn't getting ahead at all, and I was just humming along with my engine, but I was only humming along with my engine because I was totally screwing him over. It was completely unsatisfying a win. So, and those are such a huge part of the game. That's what ruins the whole experience for me. So I can't recommend it. I really can't. I know that I'm in the very, very small minority here, but it just didn't work for me because of those elements. Everything else was good. I don't know why you couldn't do that sort of thing. I mean, I like player interaction, but there had to be another way to do that aspect of it. I've heard that the expansion for this game makes it better. I don't know if it addresses those particular issues, but I'm not really inclined to find out. I think there's a good game to be had here. I think that others are going to seriously disagree with me, people who don't care about the sort of screw you elements. But for me, there's just a lot of better choices in worker placement, including Euphoria, which can be mean at times, but at least you still feel like you're in control. And know if you lose in Euphoria, I feel like it's because, I mean, you can roll poorly. I mean, just like in this game, you can roll poorly on your workers, but I feel like if you lose in Euphoria, it's because you didn't play as good a game. I feel like if you lose in Alien Frontiers, that might be the case, but it might also be that you just got totally jacked up by other players, especially in a 3 or 4 player game where people can easily gang up on you with their nasty cards. So, not for me, unfortunately, but your mileage may vary. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.